Why can't I stick with this? It's such a common space inside of the health and fitness. You can know what to do, but how do we do it more often? Even if you're consistent in other areas of your life, being able to be kind to yourself and build the skill of long-term health is something I'd love to go through today. We've done so many trainings on really understanding gut health and exercise and insulin control and all these beautiful things that are required to really know the nuts and bolts. But unless you really tackle the mental lens of staying consistent long-term, you'll always find that it's really hard to stick with it, or if you do stick with it, you make it harder than it needs to be. So I want to really bring this back to I say new, but I've been doing it for 226 days now of Duolingo learning French. And it's been a really, really nice reminder of learning something new that you're not very good at. And you have to go through that process of getting better at it, going through dips and dives of your motivation towards it, how you see yourself in regards to being good at a skill or bad at a skill, and how you talk to yourself in that process. So the big one that I think I'm going to come up with as a bit of a quote first, I can't remember who this is from, and I'd probably butcher it anyway, but essentially the quote is, "It's not the strength of the man, but the strength of their character." And I think learning a new skill is such a great example of that, because it's not about being great at the thing. It's about having the character to really stick with something, to be kind to yourself through that process and allow yourself to get better rather than expecting it to be good overnight, right? It's naive, it's dumb, and it's emotionally unintelligent to think that you can be good at something overnight and throw your toys out of the cot because you're not. And this is so important when you have an all or nothing attitude and it's being reinforced in other areas of your life, because something like health is not about nailing it out of the park. It's about making sure that you can do the best with what you've got every single day. And that might be 40% one day, it might be 80% one day, it might be 60 the next. Being able to find a way to build that consistency is ultimately this internal relationship with self. And I think being able to close the gap between discipline and self-respect is actually quite a big part of this, right? If you respect yourself and you want to look a certain way, you want to fuel yourself a certain way, you will be more disciplined with the way you fuel your body and the way you move your body, right? It's as simple as that. Being able to dive deeper into this, there can be a lot of ways that that's either reinforced in regards to like, I'm doing things that are making my body feel better, so I'm on a roll and I've got momentum. That's great. But if you don't have that momentum, where do you start? And I want you to stick with this because it's going to be hopefully a nice thought process that I'm being reminded with. I feel fairly self-reinforced with my exercise efforts now because I've been doing it for 15, 20 years to really, be in good shape or feel that I'm healthy, right? If I'm in a spot where I'm trying to do something new like French, this is a really nice way that has been like, I'm really not good at this activity. How am I talking to myself? How can I allow myself to really go through this experience of getting better at something without beating myself up along the way? And if you're in that spot where either what you used to do is just no longer working, you were doing things for your health that felt really good, and now your body's completely changed, you've hit menopause or hormones have declined or something's happened where your body's just not feeling the same way, or maybe you really just didn't have to think about it before and now you've hit this point where it's like, wow, I really need to start to understand my health rather than just going from hack to hack and kind of quick fixing it. All right. So the first part here is that giving yourself permission to learn something new. Give yourself time to realize you're going to be bad at something before you're good, right? You were crawling before you were walking before you were biking, you were maybe biking before you were swimming, you're maybe swimming before you were driving, right? That's probably a not perfect sequence, but you get the idea of if you were, crawling and you tried to walk, you fell over and you said, well, this isn't for me, I'm just going to crawl for the rest of my life, it would be relatively unproductive. Being able to get back to that exploratory nature, that childlike curiosity of getting good at something and not feeling like you have to get up and not fall over on your first go is sometimes something that you may have not experienced for 20 years because you've been walking for a while, you've been doing the same stuff, and then trying to find a different way to eat or a different way to move or learn a new language is highly uncomfortable because you haven't had to go through that level of skill acquisition in a while, right? And being able to go through that process, actually last summer we seeing someone that was 7 years old learn to ski versus someone who's 50 years old learning to ski, and the amount of additional frustration and internal discontent with the adult that couldn't get it, even though it was taking about the same amount of time for these two people to kind of get up on skis, was really, really interesting. And I think it's just such a nice example of when you're going to this health space and you're trying to get better at a skill, it is a skill acquisition process. And the biggest part of skill acquisition is the character you apply to it. So first one is giving yourself permission to be bad at something before you are good. All right. If you haven't done it before, you won't be good at something. So give yourself time to just get used to learning the ropes, falling over over a couple times, right? And just getting yourself up, because falling over when you are walking or learning to walk is going to be painful enough by itself. Telling yourself that you're not good enough or that it's not for you or whatever just makes the whole process harder, right? So just focus on the skill, not the emotion that or the label that you're attaching of why you're not good enough. I've talked about this a bit more, but this idea of catching the words that you say to yourself is such a skill in itself, and it requires an immense amount of awareness of what are the words I'm using. And I've got a really nice frame that we've used from one of our mindset coaches inside of Body Reset is, would I say this to someone else? The words I'm using to myself right now to describe this activity or this thing I've missed, would I use those same words for a friend? And in most cases, the answer is like, no, I never would even say that out loud, right? Because I'm just not talking to myself very well. And being able to just get that just a little bit closer to how you would talk to a friend. I think this awareness that resilience is created through how you talk to yourself, not by beating yourself up more, but by talking yourself better. You can't be externally resilient if internally you're beating yourself up too, right? That's a really tough place to live. If you're nice to yourself on the inside, not, always warm and fluffy, you might still have a hard line of discipline. You're really giving yourself your own boundaries, but you have that sense of, come on, you've got this. Let's move forward. Let's do that one more step. Let's get up one more time. If you've got that nature, it's going to be so much better than, swearing to yourself and telling yourself that you're not good enough, right? That internal language, I can't emphasize that enough, but it's the ability to self-audit the language you use. And I've heard some really great examples of when you've failed at something, writing the words down or even sending a voice note to yourself, and really being able to audit the language you use in that space can be super helpful. The third one, I think, is this idea that so much of the stress we create around any sort of project or progress that we want to make in some area is the timeline to which we create it, right? So for example, there's a lot of things that if I needed to lose 10 kilos and I could do it over 6 months, I could do that easy. If I needed to do that over 2 weeks, really, really hard, right? And I think being able to use that example in the amount of areas that we create where we're doing the right thing and we're doing it the right way, we've just created a timeline that's created so much more stress than was necessary. So being able to give yourself time to learn a skill, for example, this Duolingo thing with French, I'm 226 days in at the point of this video. And there have been multiple times throughout that I'm like, why do I not know it yet, right? But in hindsight, I've never learned it before. I've never been really surrounded by French speaking. My wife is French, so now I'm on the journey to learn it. But being able to look at that in hindsight, it's only 200 days. It was 2 lessons a day. It's probably 7 minutes to 10 minutes a day that I'm actually learning. I'm doing it in the micro steps. I'm doing it the same way that I'd approach health. But in the moment, you can build that emotion. You can feel like, why don't I not know it yet? I'm going to scrap it, right? But when you look at it in hindsight, it's always worth it. And you realize you're so much further than you were. It's a classic gap versus gain. I'm so focused on what yet I need to learn versus how far I've already come, how many more words I understand, how many more things I can read in French and really go deeper into that. So it's a really nice way to, one, give yourself that timeline and the reminder of where you've come from, not just how much more you've got to go. All right. Really, really good one to keep in mind. And of course, it ties so much into how you talk to yourself along the way, because you can actually be like, hey, look how far you've come, rather than look at all the stuff you still haven't done, right? Big difference in your reinforcement to doing something long term. Now, there's a little last one that I want to share with you, which is giving yourself the ability to know, is it a 0 to 1 or is it a 1 to 100? And what I mean by that is it you getting started, 0 to 1, right? Getting you from doing nothing to doing something, or is it you're doing something to doing it better? And I think really being able to clarify what part of health or the project or the area that you'd like to improve are you changing? Is it a big change where it's a drastic shift in lifestyle that you've change, which is big change, big stress, is going to require a little bit more directed effort for a shorter amount of time to get over the line? Or is it more of an improvement? And the reason I bring this up is it's kind of the same as the timelines thing, but it's also a personal expectation around how drastic is the change. Because if you're changing your whole life overnight and you're now eating breakfast, or you're thinking about food actually being healthy rather than just I'm hungry, right? When you're able to make those changes, there's going to be all of these intricacies around how you think about food, how you think about fueling your body, where you get meals from, how you prepare meals. It upheavals so much of your life, and you've got to give it the time and space to really allow the big change, right? The 0 to 1. Whereas if it's an improvement, you can think of it the other way, which is you're doing some stuff currently. Maybe you're exercising currently throughout the week, but they're all circuit classes or running, and you're not quite getting the same impact from a fat loss perspective. So now you change 2 of those to a weight training workout, and you keep the 1 run or circuit class. Now you might get, say, 2 weeks into it and be like, why is everything not changed? Cool, it doesn't work. I got to go back. But it's an improvement here. It's not a drastic upheaval. So in some cases, cases, going from 3 runs to changing them all to CrossFit and doing double the amount of effort is so much more stress and so much more of a change than your body would find useful. And just allowing yourself to realize that it's a small improvement with a longer timeline, a longer tail with how long you need to give it. And I think it's a really nice way to look at the patience factor of what timeline I really, and I guess in a lot of ways I'm saying the timeline, but being able to look at this understanding of, is it a 0 to 1 and is it a 1 to 100? Because it also ties into the type of relationship with the coaches or the help or the information that you're after in order to achieve the goal. If you're in a 0 to 1, it's going to be a case of a lot of support around the emotions, the lifestyle, the structure of your day to really figure out, like, how do I adjust all of this and actually fit it into my day? So a lot of that, there's a more supportive type coaching nature required. But I must say, one of the things that I've noticed come through that holds so many people back in the 1 to 100 is that they forget that Olympic athletes have coaches, right? And this idea of like, well, I should be able to do it by myself. And my answer to that is like, absolutely, I can't eat the food for you or do the exercise. We're just making sure you're running the right way. So being able to look at this idea of 0 to 1 versus 1 to 100, I think it's more of a relationship with a type of help and the type of information you're taking on board. Because when you go 0 to 1, as I said, it is that case of, I need to know like what to do, because at the moment I just don't know. So there's part of it that's information, but then it's the implementation factor that usually requires lots more support. Whereas for the 1 to 100, arguably the information is more important potentially than the support, but it's so much more nuanced, so much more context based. And when you give yourself the ability to at least frame this, is this brand new or is this an improvement? At least for me personally, it's allowed me to better manage emotions, expectations, and timelines by knowing the skill acquisition process I have to go with. Is this drastically new or is it a tweak in the right direction? And when I know the numbers, I know the goal, it just gives me a little bit more appreciation for the overall process. So I'm going to circle back to the initial quote I used, which is, it's not the strength of the man, but the strength of the character. I think going through that pursuit of learning or skill acquisition in any form, the character is built through the way we talk to ourselves and the way we approach challenge. And I think if nothing else, this is a really nice way to remind yourself that if you want to be proud of the person in the mirror, you need to be able to go through the stuff that you would be proud of doing. And that's not just doing it and complaining the whole way. It's giving yourself time to self-audit and reevaluate along the way to be that person that you would be happy with. All right. So I'm going to leave that there. I hope you find this helpful, but it's being very close to mind with a lot of presentations, talks, and deeper dives we've done quite recently, that this discussion of really the more intangible, but the really, really important stuff that really makes it last long term is the whole picture and makes a big difference. Hope you have an amazing week, and we'll see you next time.